Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. Welcome to the show, y'all. Look here. Johnson is pushing. He's trying to find out what's going on. Now, he's been offered a buy-in on the move, right? But he still don't know what the move is. Now, he tell his gal, you know what I'm saying, a.k.a. the police, the lieutenant, to pack it up, wrap it up, put the initials on it so that only he would know and be able to identify. They want him to see that they can make this happen, right? So she drops the pack off. You know what I'm saying? When she drops the pack off, this is a weekday. This is a weekday. Why is that significant? Because during the week, if it's not an officer bringing it in, it's got to be another way. But this is too big because these are cutie pies wrapped up. This is too big for an officer to bring in. They're going to get it all in at one time because they want to show Johnson that they're shaking the spot. So the pack gets dropped off at Gal's house. Gal take care of the business. She take it to one of the homeboys. The homeboys put the business in motion, right? Next thing you know, the pack ends up at the penitentiary, right? Pack ends up at the penitentiary. They get Johnson. They bring Johnson to the cell 2 days later. He looks at the pack. They say, what was the initials they put on the pack? And he tells them it was LT. And then they say, how was it wrapped? And then he tells them, it was folded, wrapped, put tape on it, and then initials on the top. They said, open it up. And he started ripping the top layer off of every one of them, and every one of them was exactly how he had described it to be. And now he's looking at him, he's like, how'd you do this? And they all started laughing. Don't worry about that. You in now. You in. But I want to know how you did it. That's what he keeps saying. I want to know how you did this. And they said, don't worry about that. You in. You can get it when you want it, how you want it, and as much as you want it. Don't be worried about how we getting it. We ain't ready to tell you that yet. So now Johnson is confused. He tripping, right? He tripping. Because he's looking at him like, man, if they got to move like this, there's no amount of what they could do. No limit on what they could do. And there's really no limit on what they could get. That's a new concern for them. Because while this was going down, you got to understand something. Let me paint a picture for you. After these packs got dropped off, Johnson notified his superiors. And they were watching everybody that came in. They didn't shake anybody down. They didn't have the dogs out there. But they were looking for anything suspicious, just casually looking. And not one officer that came through that day looked suspicious. Not one officer at all. Nothing suspicious happened the day that Johnson was shown the packs. Not one thing. So now they're trying to figure if it's not coming in through a staff person, not coming in through the VG, who would be able to do something like this to this magnitude without anybody saying anything? Who could do it? Who could bring something into a prison without getting patted down? Who could bring something into a prison without having to worry about security? Nobody. Not even a warden walks through. Nobody. Not even a visiting police officer. Not a nurse. Anybody that works at the prison. So now they know they have a major security breach, but they can't act. They can't. Because if they act on it, it's going to blow Johnson's cover. Everybody's going to know that he's the federalist if they do something, because it's like they had no problem before. What's going on? See, shakedowns are normal, right? But see, it's one thing to have a shakedown and know what you're looking for. It's another one to have a shakedown and don't know what you're looking for. So if you don't know what you're looking for, they usually won't do it. And they didn't do it in this situation. They didn't do it because Johnson didn't have the information that they needed. Not a bit of it. But they were panicking because they usually like to know everything. Even if they can't stop it all, they like to know how. And in this situation, they had no clue. They had no earthly idea about what was really going on at all. Now look, check this out. One of the guys, his gal, she's out there getting her money on the side, right? You know what I'm saying? She had a couple of females that she was working with, and they was all out there shaking the spot. And her dude knew it. He wasn't tripping about that because what's hers is his. You feel what I'm saying? And what's his is hers. But she was out to take a risk. Big boy risk. Moving and shaking and doing all kinds of things. She worked at the strip club, you know. So her main clientele was at the strip club. They like them pills and that Molly and all that old kind of stuff, right? And they do a little of that Christina Aguilera every now and then, that cocaine, white girl, you know what I'm talking about. So here's the thing. One night, the strip club got raided. Totally separate incident from everything else that's going on, right? She just happens to have a dude in the penitentiary that's getting his bread. But anyway, the strip club gets raided because, you know, they in the back, in them private rooms, you know what I'm saying, doing what they do with them private shows. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Licking, scratching, touching, and all this. Y'all know what I'm talking about. We ain't finna play no games. It's grown folk stories. You understand what I'm saying? So anyway, they get busted. And she just happens to have, listen to me, y'all. She just happens to have 2 pills on her. 2 pills. Ain't got no business having them on. When they pop her down, they take her down. She go down to the police department. Listen to me, y'all. When she go down to the police department, they rush her into the tank. Now, when she's in the tank, the female that be visiting Johnson, she happened to be in the back, and she's looking out there, and she sees her out there in the tank, and she's like, what is she doing down here? She could blow my cover. So they tell her, look, she just got busted at a strip club. She had 2 pills on, 2 Oxycontin. And they were like, okay. So, old gal, there had to be a lieutenant. She seized the opportunity in that immediately. She was like, look, she might be able to provide us some information that we've been trying to get about what's going on out at the prison, how they trafficking them drugs up in there, right? So, let's see if we can get her in that box and see what she says, right? I'll be listening in the other room. So they get in the box and they talking to her. They say, look, all of this can go away. All of this can go away. And she's like, how? She said, you always want something. There ain't nobody getting nothing for free down here. And they said, well, there's 3 things we want to ask you. But we got to be careful about how we ask you. And they told her, said, do you have a boyfriend at the prison? And she was like, I do. Do you want to go, you want to continue to be able to go visit and see him? She said, yeah, I do. And she knew what it was about to be said. So they looked at her and she said, look, I'll tell you who gave me the pills. I said, no, we don't want to know about the pills, but we'll take that information. And the detective leaned over the table and he said, what we want to know is how you getting those drugs into the prison. She leaned back in the chair, she looked at him, eyes got real big. She said, what are you talking about? I don't take any drugs into the prison. They was like, you don't take any drugs into the prison. Now see, the lieutenant, the female, she hadn't filled them all the way in on what's going on because she didn't want them to mess up the investigation, right? And say the wrong thing, you understand? So they said, well, when you figure out what's going on out at that prison and how they getting drugs in, you let me know. And then we'll make this charge go away. And in the meantime, in between time, we won't say nothing about it. I'm going to give you a couple of weeks to think about this. We won't say nothing about it. You're free to go. So she went back out there. They booked her out. You know what I'm saying? They gave her all her stuff back. Walked home. No bond, no nothing. You know what I'm saying? She's gone. She's out of there. Like it never happened. She goes to visit that weekend and she's talking to her dude. She tells her dude exactly what happened. And he's like, so what else did they say? She said they just wanted to know how drugs were getting into the prison. Now her dude is swift. Old vet, been in the game for a minute. He said, did they call anybody's name? And she's like, no. They didn't mention anybody's name. They just told me that if I give up how drugs are getting into the penitentiary, that the charges against me of the 2 Oxycontins will go away, like it never happened. So this is what he told her. He said, this is what you do. You call him up and you tell that detective that you got an officer that you'll give up in exchange for the charges being dismissed. Now keep in mind, you remember when I told y'all you keep an officer on the deck for throwaway? Remember I told y'all that? See, that's what a lot of people do, right? A lot of people ain't even hip to that move. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, just like that. So he gave her the officer's name and everything, right? And the information that he had. Meaning, when I say information, I'm talking about phone number, everything, because Inmate ain't supposed to have that. Gave the information and all, right? Said, look, he bought in drugs on such and such day. You know, they go back in the archives, they can look at the camera, you know, the cameras that when they coming in, they go back on the archives and look, they'll be able to see the move, right? See, most of the time, they're not going to go back in the archives on the camera unless they've been told to do it. You feel what I'm saying? The cameras is always rolling, but they're not always being watched. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. So they take big boy chances and hope that don't ever come out. But when something does come out, they always go back and look, y'all. Especially if they get a specific date and time. So when they got the information, she went back down to the police department. She told the detective what her man had told her to say. She gave up the dude's name and all this net, and she gave him a specific day and time. They went back to look on the camera. Let me tell you something. See, a lot of these cameras got automatic erase cycles and all, and that's true, right? So with these throwaways, these officers, right, that they use, they always have them do something at least once or twice a month so they can stay current. You understand what I'm talking about? I can't give it all to you, you know? But check this out. They went and checked the camera. Certified. So her charges went away. You feel me? Now, the officer got escorted out the compound, fired, charged him. That's the end of it. Game over. Put pressure on him, asking him for information. He didn't have much. He only had what he had. And that was exactly what the female had given him. He worked with one dude or so, but at the end of the day, he could not connect the dude that he gave the dope to the dope in a way that was sufficient for charges, other than his testimony. And using an officer that had been involved in the trafficking is not a good witness at all, especially when there's nothing and nobody that's going to verify his story. You see, it's only him. So they didn't charge the inmate. They didn't charge her dude or the other dude that he was dealing with at all because they couldn't really connect them. They always had it given to somebody else or set in a certain spot and it would be picked up. You feel what I'm saying? Off camera, you understand? Yes, indeed. Everybody in the penitentiary, man, is always thinking about how to get around the cameras, you see? So check this out. This is what happened. So now, the information gets back to the female and it gets back to Johnson, and they looking at it like, this is not getting us anywhere. The superiors down at the police department, they're saying that they think Johnson is pulling their leg now. But at the end of the day, they know how these drugs got there. They know that the drugs got there, but they still don't understand how. It had to be an officer. It had to be. There's not any other way for it to get in on a non-visitation day. It just has to be. They just think that they missed something. So they're going over the cameras, they're scanning. They're going over the cameras. Nothing is showing up. Nothing suspicious at all. It was a regular shift change. Everybody's moving in and out. They're taking off their boots and all this and that. They're being patted down or they're getting on a machine or some of them randomly are being stripped. All of that is happening and nothing is turning up. Nothing is turning up. But they do know that they have some dirty officers. They do know that because of the information that was provided. And they've got somebody under arrest. But it still didn't give them a big move. Johnson is telling them that's not the move. Now they're pushing. They're telling him they ain't got all day to be waiting on him. He's got to come with something. He's got to come with something sufficient. Something that's going to help them wrap this investigation up. They need it. And they're tired of playing. Now let me tell you something. Now inside the pod, where the guys in, it's a such thing as being homeless in the penitentiary, y'all. Now let me give you the game. When I tell you that somebody's homeless in the penitentiary, that means that they don't have a cell to sleep in. How can that be? Right? They're not going to send more people to the penitentiary than they have bed space for them, right? Is that true? You think that's true? It is true. But what happens is when you get at certain prisons, right, depending on who's running the pond, you're not allowed in the cell. Man, sleep in the shower. Sleep on the floor. I don't care where you sleep, but you're not coming up in here. And the officers know it. They know it. They count them where they at. You feel what I'm saying? Because it's brutal up in certain parts, right? And if you want to know how brutal, you're going to have to tune in to the next episode, right? Because it's going to get better, and it's going to give you a better context of what's going on and how it's able to happen. You feel what I'm saying? This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I'll say peace, y'all.